25 forgotten African-American homecoming dishes that vanished after the 1980s. Number 25, crackling cornbread. This was the bread that told you the family still had ties to a farm. A woman in Macon, Georgia, kept a jar of pork cracklings in her freezer from the last hog killing her father oversaw. In 1971, she mixed those cracklings into white cornmeal batter with buttermilk, a pinch of salt, and a spoonful of bacon grease, then poured it into a cast iron skillet so hot the batter hissed when it hit the pan. The cracklings were pieces of pork skin fried until they curled and shattered like glass. They gave the cornbread a salt and fat that no amount of butter could match. It was better than anything you could buy in a store. By the mid-1980s, most families had stopped rendering their own lard. The cracklings vanished from grocery stores in small towns across Alabama and Mississippi. You could not make this bread without them, and the women who knew how to render fat from a whole hog were not replaced. That skillet went quiet. Number 24, stewed tomatoes and okra. This was West Africa on a plate, and most people at the homecoming table did not even know it. Okra came to North America in the braids and pockets of enslaved women who carried seeds from their homeland across the Atlantic. A woman in Savannah, Georgia, picked okra from her garden every August and cooked it down with tomatoes, onions, salt, pepper, and a little sugar to cut the acid. She let it simmer on the stove for nearly 2 hours until the okra broke down into a thick, silky sauce that clung to a spoon. She served it over white rice. The dish cost almost nothing to make. It was simple and it was effective. A pound of okra in 1968 cost about 15 cents at a roadside stand in rural Georgia. But by the 1990s, fresh okra was harder to find in your neighborhood, and younger cooks did not want to deal with the slime. They had never learned that slow cooking was the answer. That knowledge left with the gardeners. Number 23, chicken gizzards. If you grew up in a house where nothing was wasted, you knew what a gizzard was. It is a muscular part of a chicken's digestive system, tough as leather when raw, but when cleaned properly and fried to a deep golden brown, it had a chew and a crunch that no other part of the bird could match. A woman in Jackson, Mississippi, bought gizzards by the pound at the butcher counter for 20 cents in 1965. She boiled them first until they were tender, then dredged them in seasoned flour and dropped them into a skillet of hot oil. Children at the homecoming table ate them like candy. Some women simmered gizzards in gravy instead and served them over rice. Either way, the dish was proof that black cooking wasted nothing. Your grandmother did not throw away what she could transform. That was the whole philosophy. Number 22, hog head cheese. This is the one that makes people under 40 stop chewing. It was not cheese at all. It was a terrine made from the head of a pig, boiled for hours until every scrap of meat fell from the bone. A woman in Lafayette, Louisiana, learned to make it from her mother, who learned it from hers, going back to a time when a family could not afford to waste a single part of the animal. She pulled the meat apart by hand, mixed it with onion, vinegar, salt, red pepper, and sage, then pressed it into a loaf pan and let the natural gelatin set it firm overnight in the ice box. It sliced like cold cuts. You ate it on saltine crackers with hot sauce. Some called it souse. In Charleston, South Carolina, it was a Christmas and New Year tradition going back generations, connecting black families there to Barbados, where many of their ancestors had first been enslaved. By the 1990s, the younger generation refused to eat it. They did not know its name. Number 21, poke salad. This was a dish that came from the woods, not from a store. Poke weed grew wild across the South along fence lines and ditches and the edges of cotton fields. A woman in rural Alabama in the 1950s could walk out her back door and fill a grocery bag with poke leaves in 20 minutes. But the plant is toxic if you do not cook it right. The leaves had to be boiled 3 separate times, with the water thrown out each time to remove the poison. After the third boil, the greens were safe. She would fry them in bacon grease with onion and scrambled eggs. It tasted like a cross